Respect for animals goes hand in hand with respect for our fellow human beings. Respect for animals doesn't mean that animals can't play a role in education. Animals are an important part of our lives and have a role to play in all IB programmes. The guidelines for the use of animals in IB schools seek to set out the parameters for the inclusion of animals in an IB education. This short film illustrates some of the ways in which animals can play a part in an IB education and some of the considerations that need to be addressed before they do. We will be meeting stick insects in the primary years programme and looking at the use of students as subjects in the middle years programme. We will also be sitting in on some of the discussions surrounding the ethics of the use of animals in investigations in the diploma programme. The guidelines for the use of animals highlights a range of considerations that should be taken into account before committing to the care of an animal, such as in a primary years setting.
One of the ways we've used animals in the classroom was with the Year 5 and 6 students. They were doing a unit of inquiry in the transdisciplinary theme of sharing the planet. The central idea was that people can make choices about sustainability to gain a deeper understanding of conservation and responsibility. So we brought in some eggs and the teacher put them on the side and they just left them there to see what would happen. The students asked questions, they made observations, and eventually they had to solve the mystery of what was inside the egg. As the egg hatched, they discovered they had stick insects in their classroom.
What are stick insects? Well, stick insects are animals that just live in trees, and when they hear anybody or they're scared, they put themselves like a stick.
Once they discovered they had stick insects in the classroom, it was necessary to find out what kind of environment they needed. Did they need feeding, cleaning? Did they need water? And how could we keep them safe? Because this is a classroom after all.
You have to spray the stick insects with water because they live in the rainforest, and so when they live in the rainforest they get rain every day. And when the ivy's finished up and they need new fresh ivy, otherwise they don't survive.
At the end of the Sharing the Planet, we kept the stick insects in the classroom and the students were able to observe them throughout the rest of the year. At the end of the year, one of the students decided that they would like to take responsibility. They took them home over the summer and they cared for them. They've now brought them to their following class, so a whole new set of students can engage with the stick insects and make scientific observations.
Keeping animals in school is not just an issue for the primary years. The guidelines for the use of animals apply to any context where animals are present.
Part of the internal assessment in environmental systems is for students to do a project on vermicomposting. Students will get a basic setup, a wormery. The container will be of about 27 liters volume, and they will be working with tiger worms. The container is filled with a little bit of bedding, shredded newspaper. On top of that, about 200-300 grams of regular garden soil. They obviously weight exactly what goes in, so the weight of the newspaper, the weight of the soil, the tiger worms themselves.
We had to count our worms individually, which we did have to do carefully.
About 200 worms or so.
Yeah, some of us did 300. It's too much, but yes.
And you learn a lot of responsibility with it though, because it's a 10-week process. So you have to keep an eye on it the whole time while doing other classes as well and stuff. So
not only that, but it really comes to like your own, like you said, responsibility. Because I know some cases where some people have forgotten to feed their worms, or some people fed their worms a bit late, and at that point you really have to get to it, or else
and to weigh everything that you put in.
Because most people don't realize that we're dealing with lives here, no matter what it is. It is a life. You got to feed it. You can't feed it the wrong thing because then it doesn't go.
Well, I think it's interesting to see that a little worm that's only this small can produce something that's actually useful to us, or produce something like natural like that, and just use a banana peel that we just throw away to produce something. Even though they are worms, they do have not feelings, but like they're still living animals. Like they have.
You can't take it purely as statistics and that you're taking notes, because you are legit dealing with another life form. And for example, as you said, if you just close the lid without paying attention where the worms are, you might squish the worm, break the worm, kill the worm, and then that's not really a fair process, is it?
And we take them out of their natural habitat, so you need to treat them in a way that makes them
then we have
feel
to
like they are there. Like
provide them with
the right things that they need.
Yeah, kind of.
We will carry on with this experiment. We've started this halfway September, so just at the start of the academic year, and hopefully this will carry on until early December. What they do with them is either release them here back into the environment, or they go to their mommy's garden, where they are very useful as well, obviously, for the fertility of the soil.
Frequently, investigations take place where the students themselves are the subjects. As the guidelines for the use of animals highlights, this requires additional considerations to be taken into account, as this extract from a middle years programme lesson illustrates.
So we have been looking at what is good research and how we can do good research in the lab. And what we want to think about today, we have been preparing for this, and today it is you that is going to be part of the experiment, okay? Often we have other equipment that we bring out and we use that to test and collect our data, and today we are using you. So that means we have had to think about how do we go about that in a safe and sensible way, okay? So one of the things that we talked about yesterday was permission, okay? We're not forcing you to take part in the experiment, okay? We would like you to take part. We also had to have you think about hygiene and your safety as well. So we talked to people about whether or not they had asthma and different aspects. So today we are going to use this to collect our data. And you have each got one of these in the middle of the table. What did we discuss yesterday about why we need to have these?
For hygiene, so that people don't get other people's germs.
Yes. So if perhaps someone has the cold, we have to think about these things. So we make sure that everyone has their own mouthpiece for hygiene reasons. Okay, so we need to make sure that it is on 0 each time. And then you have to take the biggest, deepest breath you have, and then you blow with all your might into this, and you try to get the highest reading you can. Once you have taken your reading, then you have to look at the scale, and as a group, I want you to look at the scale and figure out what you're going to record on your sheet. Okay? Thank you to you guys today, because I think you worked very nicely together. I think that you were being very kind and helpful to each other, and let's get back up.
In the diploma programme, there are considerations for the internal assessments, the extended essay, as well as day-to-day class investigations.
I'm really glad with the animal policy that the GP has, or the IB has developed, basically because before becoming a teacher I worked as a researcher in the animal husbandry department, which nowadays is even called Animal Science and Society, so they're also going in that same direction. Laboratory animals, but any kind of animal, need the respect, the ethical respect that the animals require. And already then the 3 R's were a framework that we used to work with, and it's reassuring to see the 3 R's back in school as well. And it's nice to be able to focus with the students on this idea of refinement, replacement and reduction. So that when the question which always pops up the first lesson, are we going to do dissections? You can actually give good arguments as to why the dissections might not be necessary to actually, well, complement the teaching. What we then do is, end of the DP2, the very last day, we actually try to get material from butchers, which is relatively difficult in the Netherlands because due to all kinds of regulations in favour of the animals. So I'm not complaining. And I do buy mice in a pet shop, which are actually frozen. They're killed and frozen as being food for snakes and other kinds of reptiles. And we have 1 mice for 8 students. It's a voluntary kind of practical, but it's always well filled and tremendously appreciated. So that is the dissection where I do believe that actually looking at the way the tissues are organised, the pancreatic gland is so different from what you see it being in models. The heart, the fact that the atria completely collapse, whereas obviously inside they should have the same volume. All of those are really intriguing to see, to witness, but it has to serve a purpose.
The guidelines for the use of animals highlights the importance of engaging students in discussions about the ethics of the use of animals, as well as the protocols for the use of animals.
So this class today is really for you guys to start being critical on when and how and what we do with animals in experiments. Discuss in the groups that you're sitting in. We have 5 groups and we have 5 case studies. So what I would like you to do is, with your group, read the case study, pretend you're the teacher, and give feedback, give comments on that case that is presented to you. And I would like you to think, and I can write it on the board, about four things while discussing the case study, and that is this experiment permissible? Am I going to give permission to the student to carry out this experiment? Why yes or why no? Yeah? What are the limitations of this experiment? What part of the guideline, so what part of the document that I give you, have you used to come to a conclusion?
For our case study, we were testing the stimulus touch from garden snails. They would be placed on a class surface and touched by, their mantle would be touched by a paintbrush, and they would test the reaction time of the touch from their mantles. And it would be 10 snails, each touched 10 times.
Yeah, so basically we think that it's actually an okay experiment because the fact that we're not really harming the snails directly is not creating a problem. But also, as long as you put the snails back into their natural environment, I think that, or we all think that, it's not going to harm the environment or the snail.
Okay, so we have it that a student would like to investigate the effect of caffeine on heart rate, and they propose to allow 10 of their fellow students to drink different strengths of ground coffee and then measure the heart rate before and after consumption. So we were just kind of discussing what advice we'd give to the students.
Yeah, so first of all, there are a number of limitations within this experiment, such as if you were measuring or experimenting on 10 students, the effect on the heart rate after the consumption of coffee, you would have to take into account other factors like what food they ate before or after, and health conditions and things like that. So it's really important to take those things into account. As well as, according to the IB syllabus, they have to make sure the subjects provide a written consent and that everything's anonymous and that they can withdraw from the experiment anytime they want. So that's really important to consider as well.
They should come to us with secondary research already about the caffeine and what becomes dangerous and what level of caffeine becomes dangerous.
It's also important to look at how many different variables there are, and that it wouldn't actually be practical to do this experiment because it'd be so many different variables you'd have to control. In fact, it'd be kind of pointless doing it because your data would be most likely flawed.
And you would also have to control different body types, making sure everyone's a similar weight, a similar height, so that not one person would be more affected or more tolerant to the caffeine than another.
And also gender. Yeah, but even taking all these variables into account, you also have natural levels of stimulants and other chemicals within your body that would probably influence the data itself, which you can't necessarily control or monitor. So I mean, whilst it's allowed, there's probably no point.
But it is done in a lot of schools worldwide.
Yeah, it's very popular, but it's not very practical, like Joe said.
Okay, so our question was that a student wants to investigate the effect of different pH levels on the growth of penicillin.
So what we have to consider with this problem is that it's a microorganism and it's not an animal. But the biggest problem that we have to pay attention to is our own safety, because obviously we are working with fungi and we have to make sure that we're working in a sterile environment, as well as making sure we're properly disposing of the agar plates after we're using them by sealing them or heating them to a high temperature and then disposing of them. So.
And also it says it has to be 37 degrees here, but it must be below 30 degrees because we don't know what we're growing.
So under DP, it is important for the students regarding their internal assessment and extended essay that they are aware and knowledgeable in the guidelines for the use of animals and humans in experiments. We had a great discussion today in class, so have the discussion with the students. It's definitely worthwhile.
Guidelines for the use of animals can be found on the OCC. All IB teachers are encouraged to familiarise themselves with this document. The guidelines for the use of animals has been shaped by the entire IB community and will be systematically reviewed. Feedback from the community is most welcome.